Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. Nia Carter pressed her forehead against the cool bathroom tile, willing the throbbing in her temples to subside. At 34, she'd mastered the art of silent breakdowns, quick, efficient moments of surrender before straightening her spine and facing the world again. 5 years of single motherhood had taught her that the extended luxury of grief was unaffordable when a 7-year-old depended on you for everything. Mommy Lila's voice echoed through their modest Garden District apartment. "Miss Simone is calling on your phone." Nia inhaled, deeply smoothed her hands over her massive dark curls, and plastered on a smile she didn't feel. "Coming, baby." In the living room, Lila sat cross-legged on their worn couch, Nia's phone clutched in her small hands. The girl was the perfect blend of Nia and Marcus, her father's expressive eyes and dimpled smile, Nia's high cheekbones and stubborn chin. The sight of her daughter simultaneously healed and wounded Nia's heart every single day. "Hey, Simone." Nia answered, tucking the phone between ear and shoulder as she gathered Lila's scattered homework. "Don't you dare give me that 'I have too much work' nonsense." Simone's voice came through sharp. "With 5 years of accumulated concern, it's my 35th birthday. You haven't been out in months. The sitter's already paid for. I'm picking you up at 8. Nia sighed, glancing at the stack of legal briefs waiting on her dining table. As a paralegal at one of New Orleans' most demanding firms, she'd fought hard for her position, proving repeatedly that single motherhood wouldn't impact her performance. Every promotion felt like a victory against the whispers that had followed her divorce. "Fine," she conceded, "but I'm not staying out late." Simone's triumphant laugh warmed Nia despite herself. "Wear that burgundy dress that makes you look incredible. You need to remember you're more than just Lila's mom and Thompson and Blake's workhorse." 3 hours later, Nia stood before her full-length mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The burgundy dress clung to curves that had softened since her 20s, but retained their power. She'd arranged her natural curls into a halo of controlled chaos and applied makeup for the first time in weeks. Smoky shadow, accentuating eyes that held too many secrets, crimson lipstick on a mouth that had forgotten how to smile without effort. "You look like a princess, Mommy Lila," said from the doorway, eyes wide with admiration. Nia knelt, careful not to snag her dress. "And you'll be asleep when I get home, little one. Mind Mrs. Lopez, and remember, brush your teeth, say your prayers, and dream of sunshine." Lila recited their nightly ritual. "I know, Mommy." The embrace they shared anchored Nia, reminding her why every sacrifice mattered. For this child, she would endure anything, even a night, pretending to enjoy the company of strangers when all she wanted was the quiet comfort of her empty bed. Simone's gleeful celebration at Starlight Lounge quickly evolved into a blur of introductions, cocktails, and bass-heavy music that vibrated through Nia's chest. 2 drinks in, the tension in her shoulders began to dissolve. 3 drinks in, she found herself laughing genuinely at her friends' outrageous stories. 4 drinks in, she allowed herself to be pulled onto the dance floor, her body remembering rhythms she thought she'd forgotten. That's when she felt it, a prickling awareness racing along her spine, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She turned, scanning the crowded bar, and collided with a gaze so intense it nearly stopped her heart. He stood at the edge of the dance floor, commanding attention despite his stillness. Broad shoulders filled out a midnight blue button-down that contrasted beautifully with rich brown skin. His closely cropped beard framed full lips, curved into the barest suggestion of a smile. Something about him resonated deep within Nia, a chord of familiarity she couldn't place through the haze of Hennessy and adrenaline. "Who is that?" she whispered to Simone, unable to look away. Her friend followed her gaze and shrugged. "No idea, but honey, he hasn't taken his eyes off you since we walked in." As if hearing them, the stranger raised his glass in a subtle toast. The gesture was confident, without arrogance, an invitation without demand. Heat bloomed across Nia's chest and rose to her cheeks. For 5 years, she'd been invisible to everyone except as Lila's mother or a reliable employee. To be seen, truly seen as a woman, again made her dizzy with unexpected longing. "I need some air," she murmured, threading through the crowd toward the balcony overlooking Bourbon Street. The night air kissed her heated skin, jazz from a nearby club, mingling with the muted thump of the lounge behind her. She closed her eyes, letting the cacophony of the quarter wash over her. When she opened them again, he was there, keeping a respectful distance while occupying entirely too much of her awareness. "Mind some company." His voice was deep textured with notes that strummed something buried in her memory. "I suppose that depends on the company," she replied, surprising herself with the flirtation in her tone. His smile widened, revealing perfect teeth and awakening butterflies she thought had long since died within her. I promise to improve your evening, not complicate it." What followed was a conversation that flowed like the Mississippi itself, powerful, inevitable, carrying her along currents she had no desire to fight. He listened when she spoke, asked questions that suggested genuine interest rather than practiced seduction. They discovered shared passions for jazz, disagreed playfully about literature, and found common ground in their love for the city's complex soul. "I haven't talked like this with anyone in years," Nia admitted, leaning against the balcony railing. "Most men hear single mom and either disappear or immediately try to prove what great father material they are." "Their loss," he replied, his gaze never leaving her face, "though I understand the impulse to stay. Some women are worth rearranging your life for." The sincerity in his voice sent a shiver down Nia's spine that had nothing to do with the night breeze. He moved closer, close enough that she could detect the faint scent of his cologne sandalwood and something uniquely male that made her body remember desires long suppressed. "Dance with me," he said, finally extending his hand. The rational part of Nia's mind, the part that managed schedules and budgets, and never took unnecessary risks, screamed caution. But the woman beneath the responsibility, the one who had been silenced by survival for too long, reached for him without hesitation. On the dance floor, his hands settled at the small of her back, firm and commanding, yet gentle enough to leave her choice intact. They moved together as if they'd done so 1,000 times before, bodies communicating in a language more honest than words. Each point of contact between them built a simmer of desire Nia had convinced herself she would never feel again. "You're trembling," he observed, his lips close to her ear. "It's been a long time," she admitted, vulnerability seeping through alcohol-lowered defenses. His eyes darkened with an emotion she couldn't name. "For me too." Later, she would struggle to remember who moved first. All she knew was that one moment they were dancing and the next his mouth was on hers, claiming her with a kiss that obliterated thought. His lips were both familiar and excitingly new, demanding a response her body gave without hesitation. Her arms wound around his neck, fingers tracing the close-cropped hair at his nape as she pressed herself against the solid wall of his chest. The world narrowed to sensation, his taste, the controlled strength in his hands as they spanned her waist, the hardness of his desire evident against her hip. 5 years of touch starvation, combusted in an inferno of need that consumed all reason. "Come with me," he whispered against her lips, the request both question and promise. In answer, Nia took his hand, allowing him to lead her through the crowd past a wide-eyed Simone and into the warm New Orleans night where possibility awaited. In the taxi, they couldn't keep their hands off each other. His large palm cupped her face thumb, tracing her cheekbone with a tenderness that contrasted with the hunger in his kiss. Nia's fingers worked at his shirt buttons, desperate to feel skin against skin. When he growled a warning that she was pushing his control, the sound vibrated through her, stoking flames she thought had been extinguished years ago. The hotel suite door had barely closed behind them when he lifted her against it, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist. His strength made her feel delicate in a way that empowered rather than diminished. He whispered praise against her throat as his hands explored the curves of her body through the thin fabric of her dress. "Tell me you want this," he demanded, his voice strained with restraint. "Tell me you want me. I want you." Nia breathed the simple truth of those words, stunning her with their intensity. "I need you," he replied. He carried her to the bed, laying her down with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes. As articles of clothing were discarded, revealing bodies to appreciative gazes, Nia surrendered to the moment completely. For one night, she would allow herself to be simply a woman, desiring and desired, free from the weight of her past and the uncertainty of her future. When he finally moved within her, Nia cried out at the exquisite fullness, the perfect friction that sent sparks cascading through her nervous system. He set a rhythm that spoke of barely restrained passion, his gaze never leaving hers, creating an intimacy that transcended the physical act. Their bodies remembered a dance choreographed long ago, muscle memory, guiding them to a pleasure so intense it bordered on spiritual communion. "Beautiful," he whispered against her skin. "So beautiful." Release, when it came, shattered Nia into countless fragments of light and sensation. She called out wordlessly as waves of pleasure crashed through her, dimly aware of his answering groan as he found his own completion. In that suspended moment, she felt the burden of the last 5 years lift from her shoulders, replaced by a weightless peace she'd forgotten existed. Later, as moonlight spilled through half-closed curtains and his strong arms cradled her against his chest, Nia drifted toward sleep with a smile on her lips. Tomorrow would bring reality crashing back, but tonight she would savor this unexpected gift of passion and connection. Tomorrow would be soon enough to remember why she couldn't afford to believe in second chances. Chapter 2. Faces from the past. Consciousness returned to Nia in disorienting fragments, silken sheets against naked skin. The unfamiliar weight of an arm draped possessively across her waist, the gentle rhythm of someone else's breathing against her neck. Before opening her eyes, her body catalogued the sweet aches of passionate lovemaking muscles used in ways they had forgotten. Memories of the night before flooded back in, heated flashes, his mouth exploring every inch of her skin, her nails scoring paths down his back. The reverent way he'd whispered beautiful against her inner thigh. They'd moved together with an urgency that bordered on desperation, each touch simultaneously brand new and hauntingly familiar. She hadn't even known his name. The thought jolted Nia fully awake. What had she done? She who prided herself on control and careful choices, who hadn't been with anyone since the divorce, had given herself completely to a stranger. Shame and exhilaration battled within her as she carefully extricated herself from his embrace, relieved when he didn't stir. In the bathroom of what she now recognized as a luxury hotel suite, Nia confronted her reflection. Tousled curls framed a face wearing last night's smudged makeup, and something else, a glow she hadn't seen in years. Her burgundy dress lay in a crumpled heap on the marble floor where he had dropped it after peeling it from her body with exquisite slowness. "What were you thinking?" she whispered to her reflection. But the woman staring back at her seemed transformed, as if last night's passion had awakened something essential that had been dormant for too long. Nia splashed cold water on her face, trying to clear the remaining fog of Hennessy and desire. She needed to leave before he woke, before the fantasy of anonymous passion gave way to the awkwardness of morning after reality. Gathering her dress, she winced at the wrinkles. It would have to do. She'd call a rideshare, sneak home, and this night would become a secret memory to sustain her through lonely evenings ahead. The shower started in the other room, giving her the perfect cover for escape. She quickly shimmied into her dress, grateful he'd had the foresight to hang it rather than leave it on the floor. Locating her clutch purse, she was checking for her phone when the bathroom door opened behind her. Leaving without saying goodbye, his voice, that rich baritone that had whispered such exquisite promises against her skin, froze Nia in place. Something about the timbre, the particular cadence of his words, tugged at memories she'd worked hard to bury. Slowly she turned. He stood in the bathroom doorway, a plush hotel towel slung low on narrow hips, water droplets clinging to the defined planes of his chest. His face, now clean-shaven, was no longer partially obscured by the dim lighting of the club or the shadow of his beard. 5 years had matured his features, added subtle lines at the corners of his eyes, but there was no mistaking the man who had once been the center of her world. Marcus, the name escaped her lips as barely more than a breath. Marcus Tate, her ex-husband, the father of her child, the man who had walked away from their marriage, stood before her with an expression so tender it made her heart constrict painfully in her chest. "Hello, Nia," he said her name like a prayer, like a homecoming. The world tilted beneath Nia's feet. Last night she had shared the most intimate connection possible. With this man had whispered desires into his ear, had surrendered completely to his touch, had allowed him to witness her at her most vulnerable, and all along he had known exactly who she was. "You knew," she accused, humiliation and rage surging through her in equal measure. "You knew it was me." He nodded. "Unrepentant. From the moment I saw you on that dance floor. And you didn't think to mention that tiny detail." Before Nia gestured wildly at the rumpled bed, unable to finish the sentence. "Would you have stayed if I had?" Marcus countered, his tone frustratingly reasonable. "Would you have given me even 5 minutes to explain, to apologize?" "Apologize?" Nia laughed, the sound brittle even to her own ears. "What good does that do me now, Marcus? What good does that do Lila?" The mention of their daughter's name darkened his expression. "How is she?" "Don't." Nia held up a hand, suddenly hyper-aware of her disheveled appearance, the evidence of their night together written all over her body. "You don't get to ask about her now. You lost that right when you walked away." Marcus took a step toward her, then seemed to think better of it when she flinched. "I didn't walk away from Lila. I walked away from us, from what we'd become." Semantics. Nia spat, gathering her belongings with trembling hands. She needed to escape, to process this impossible situation away from his presence, which still affected her in ways she refused to acknowledge. "I have to go." "Nia, wait." His voice carried the command. It always had the authority that had once made her feel protected but had eventually suffocated her. "Please just give me 10 minutes. For what she whirled to face him, hating the bare tears that threatened to fall. What could you possibly have to say that would matter now? Marcus moved to his suitcase, extracting a folded t-shirt and sweatpants. The mundane act of dressing himself gave Nia a moment to collect her scattered thoughts. Once clothed, he turned to her with newfound vulnerability in his expression. "I've spent 5 years trying to figure out what to say if I ever got the chance." He began, perching on the edge of the desk rather than approaching her. 5 years replaying every mistake, Every moment I put my career above our family. Every time I missed the signs that you were drowning while I climbed the corporate ladder." The raw honesty in his voice caught Nia off guard. This wasn't the defensive posturing she'd expected, not the slick attorney's deflection of responsibility. "I made a terrible mistake." He continued each word deliberate and weighted. "The biggest of my life. And seeing you last night holding you again, it only confirmed what I've known for years. I never stopped loving you, Nia." The declaration hung in the air between them, dangerous and tempting. Nia shook her head, backing toward the door. "No, you don't get to say that to me. Not after everything. It's the truth." Marcus ran a hand over his close-cropped hair, a gesture so familiar it made Nia's chest ache with forgotten tenderness. "I've spent 5 years trying to fill the hole you left in my life. Nothing works." Nia watched him struggle for words, his usual eloquence abandoned in favor of simple honesty. The contrast between this moment and their passionate encounter was dizzying. "That's a you problem, Marcus. I've moved on." His eyebrow arched in that infuriatingly knowing way. "Have you?" "Because that's not what last night felt like to me." Heat flooded Nia's face. "I didn't know it was you. I would never have." "But you did," he interrupted gently. "Your body recognized mine, even if your mind didn't. What we had, what we still have, that doesn't just disappear." "Stop it." Nia's voice cracked with emotion she couldn't suppress. "You're twisting things. I was drunk lonely. You were magnificent." Marcus countered, his eyes darkening with the memory. "Passionate, uninhibited, exactly as I remembered. And after, when you slept in my arms, it felt like the last 5 years never happened." Nia couldn't bear the intensity of his gaze or the dangerous pull of his words. "Well, they did happen. You left. I raised our daughter alone. I rebuilt my life without you in it. One night doesn't change that." "It can," Marcus said, his voice dropping to that intimate register that had always been her undoing if we let it. Before Nia could formulate a response, Marcus crossed the room and dropped to one knee before her. The gesture was so unexpected, so absurd in context, that Nia could only stare down at him in speechless confusion. "Nia Carter, I've spent 5 years regretting the day I walked out that door. 5 years imagining what our life could have been if I'd been man enough to stay and fight for us. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway." His voice, always so confident, trembled slightly. "Marry me again. Let me come home." The proposal hung in the air between them, as shocking as a thunderclap on a clear day. Nia felt as though all the oxygen had been sucked from the room, leaving her lightheaded and unsteady. This moment was so far beyond the realm of possibility that she had no emotional framework to process it. "Have you lost your mind?" She finally managed, her voice barely audible. Marcus remained kneeling, his expression earnest. "Probably, but I'm dead serious, Nia. Running into you last night wasn't coincidence. It was the universe giving us another shot, and I'm not going to waste it." "The universe?" Nia echoed incredulously. "Since when do you believe in cosmic signs?" The Marcus I knew believed in spreadsheets and 5-year plans. "The Marcus you knew was an arrogant workaholic who took his family for granted," he admitted, finally rising to his full height, which still towered over her own 5'7" frame. "I've changed." "People don't change," Nia retorted, though the man before her seemed both achingly familiar and a stranger simultaneously. "They do when they lose everything that matters." His gaze held hers unflinching. "Ask me how I know." Something in his tone, the raw honesty perhaps, gave Nia pause. The anger sustaining her began to waver, threatened by the dangerous pull of curiosity. What had these 5 years been like for him? Had he suffered as she had? The vindictive part of her hoped so, while another part, the part that had clung to him desperately through those final terrible months of their marriage, ached at the thought of his pain. "This is insane," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "We can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened." "I'm not suggesting we pick up where we left off," Marcus clarified, taking a careful step toward her. "That marriage was broken. I want to build something new with you, something stronger." Nia's phone buzzed insistently in her clutch, breaking the tension. Grateful for the distraction, she checked the screen. 5 missed calls from Simone, 3 text messages expressing increasing concern. It was nearly 9. Lila would be wondering where she was. "I have to go," she said, this time with renewed determination. "Lila's waiting for me." At the mention of their daughter, Marcus's expression softened. She must be so big now. 7, right. The simple fact that he knew Lila's age caught Nia off guard. Had he been keeping track all this time? Yes, she confirmed, unable to deny him this small connection to the child they shared. "She's in 2nd grade, smart as a whip, and stubborn as her father." A smile transformed Marcus's face, highlighting the dimples that Lila had inherited. "I'd love to see her." The request, spoken so simply, opened a Pandora's box of complications Nia wasn't prepared to face. I can't think about that right now. Marcus nodded, accepting the boundary with surprising grace. Fair enough, but this conversation isn't over. It is, she insisted, backing toward the door, though her conviction sounded hollow even to her own ears. Last night was a mistake. A pleasant one, but a mistake nonetheless. If that's what you need to tell yourself right now, go ahead. He reached for her then, his touch gentle as he tucked a stray curl behind her ear. The familiar gesture sent unwelcome tingles down Nia's spine. But we both know the truth. What happened between us was real, and it can be real again. Nia stepped back, breaking the dangerous contact. Goodbye, Marcus. He made no move to stop her as she gathered her things and headed for the door, but his parting words followed her into the hallway. I'll be waiting, Nia, however long it takes. In the safety of the elevator, Nia's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks as her mind replayed the impossible morning. The shock of recognition, the audacity of his proposal, the undeniable fact that despite everything, her body still responded to his touch like a well-tuned instrument to its master musician. Outside, the humid New Orleans morning enveloped her like a weighted blanket. Nia hailed a taxi, giving the driver her address in a voice that sounded distant to her own ears. As the cab navigated the awakening city, her fingers unconsciously touched her lips, still tender from his kisses. Marcus Tate wanted her back, wanted their family back. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating, a high-voltage current of possibility that threatened the carefully constructed barriers around her heart. Never again, she whispered to herself as the taxi approached her neighborhood. It was a promise she'd made before every night for the first year after he left, when loneliness threatened to drown her. But this time, with the scent of him still clinging to her skin and the echo of his proposal ringing in her ears, the words sounded hollow, because deep in a place she refused to acknowledge, a treacherous voice whispered back, "What if?" Chapter 3. Beautiful Destruction. Nia sank into her office chair, staring blankly at the stack of depositions demanding her attention. 3 days had passed since the morning in Marcus's hotel room, yet every moment remained etched in her memory with painful clarity. Sleep eluded her each night, bringing dreams where passion and anger twisted together in a toxic dance that left her gasping, awake sheets twisted around her trembling body. "You look like you've seen a ghost," observed Kayla, her co-worker and closest ally at Thompson & Blake, placing a steaming latte on Nia's desk. "Simone's birthday celebration hit you that hard." Nia attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Something like that. The truth was too complicated to share even with Kayla. How could she explain that the man who'd shattered her heart 5 years ago now wanted a second chance? That despite every rational argument against it, some treacherous part of her still responded to him with a hunger that frightened her. "You need to focus," she muttered to herself, opening the Wilson case file. The senior partners were counting on her analysis by end of day, and Nia had built her reputation on reliability. No matter what personal earthquake had struck, work remained her sanctuary until it wasn't. "Miss Carter," the receptionist's voice crackled through the intercom. "There's a gentleman here to see you. A Mr. Tate. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent." The blood in Nia's veins turned to ice. Her fingers froze over her keyboard as her pulse accelerated to a dangerous rhythm. "Tell him I'm unavailable," she managed, panic rising in her throat. "I tried, but he says he'll wait all day if necessary. He's quite determined." Of course he was. Determination had always been Marcus's trademark quality, one she'd once admired until it turned to stubborn pride that wouldn't bend even to save their marriage. "Send him away," Monica Nia commanded, her voice stronger than she felt. The conference room door swung open, and there he stood, Marcus Tate, in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his body. The corporate warrior she'd watched him become before their marriage imploded. Nia, her name on his lips, sent an involuntary shiver cascading down her spine. "We need to talk." Kayla's eyebrows shot nearly to her hairline as she glanced between them. "I'll just go check on that Peterson filing," she murmured, retreating with the speed of someone escaping a potential crime scene. Nia rose from her desk, indignation replacing her initial shock. "How dare you come to my workplace? This is completely inappropriate. You're ignoring my calls." Marcus closed the door behind him, his expression resolute. "You left me no choice. I left you no." Nia broke off, aware that her rising voice would attract attention from neighboring offices. "Not here," she hissed, grabbing her purse and brushing past him, careful to avoid contact that might weaken her resolve. The elevator ride to the building's rooftop garden was 16 floors of suffocating silence. Nia's mind raced through the years, not the recent painful ones of single motherhood, But the earlier days when everything between them burned with such intensity, it seemed impossible it could ever be extinguished. Their first meeting at Tulane when 19-year-old Marcus had literally swept her off her feet after accidentally knocking her down on his way to football practice. The immediate chemistry that had them skipping classes to spend hours tangled in his dorm room sheets discovering each other's bodies with the reverent enthusiasm of first love. Their wedding day 3 years later, small but perfect with Marcus, looking at her as if she'd hung the moon and stars personally for him. Forever he'd vowed, his voice breaking with emotion that had made her heart swell almost painfully in her chest. The early days in their first apartment, so poor they ate ramen 5 nights a week, but so rich in dreams and ambition, making love on their sole piece of furniture, a mattress on the floor, planning the empire they would build together. The fierce pride she'd felt watching Marcus excel in law school, his natural brilliance earning him offers from top firms, the graduations, promotions, achievements they'd celebrated with champagne, and nights of passion so intense they left marks on each other's skin. The elevator doors opened to the garden mercifully empty during the mid-morning workday. Nia strode to the far corner where potted magnolias provided some privacy from the security cameras. "You have 5 minutes." She announced, arms folded across her chest like armor. Marcus's eyes, those deep brown eyes that had once looked at her with such adoration, studied her face with an intensity that made her skin warm, despite her anger. "I've missed you," he said simply. The unadorned honesty in those 3 words snapped something inside Nia. "Missed me for 5 years, Marcus. Where was this missing me when Lila had pneumonia and spent 3 nights in the hospital? Where was it when I had to explain to our 4-year-old why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore? Where was it during every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone you weren't there for?" Pain transformed his features, aging him in an instant. "I deserve that. All of it and more. You don't get to come back now that I've done all the hard work." Nia continued, unleashing years of carefully contained anger. "I'm the one who held our daughter while she cried for you. I'm the one who worked 2 jobs until I could get this position. I'm the one who carried on when you decided we weren't worth fighting for. Is that what you think happened?" Marcus's voice dropped dangerously, his own carefully controlled emotion breaking through. "That I just decided one day our family wasn't worth the effort. What else could I think?" Nia demanded her hands, now gesturing wildly as passion overrode professionalism. "You were gone all the time, working 60-hour weeks, traveling constantly. When you were home, you were distant, checking email, taking calls, mentally absent even when physically present. And then, when I needed you most..." She stopped, the memory still too painful to articulate, a wound that refused to fully heal. "When you lost the baby," Marcus finished softly, the shared grief briefly connecting them across the chasm of years. The miscarriage in their 5th year of marriage, the beginning of the end, 4 months along, names picked out, nursery colors, chosen the cramping that had started during a dinner. Nia ate alone because Marcus was stuck at the office. The terrifying rush to the emergency room, waking up empty in every sense of the word. "You weren't there." Nia whispered, tears threatening despite her determination to remain emotionally armored. "I called you 6 times while I was bleeding in the bathroom, and you didn't pick up until it was too late." Marcus's face contorted with remembered anguish, the mask of corporate confidence slipping completely. "I've relived that night 1,000 times, Nia. If I could go back. But you can't." Her voice hardened, years of practiced self-protection asserting itself. "And you didn't just miss that night. You checked out completely afterward. You buried yourself in work while I was drowning in grief, because I couldn't bear to see your pain and know I had failed you." Marcus confessed, stepping closer, his vulnerability now fully exposed. "Every time I looked at you, I saw accusation in your eyes. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. So you left instead." "So I left," he agreed quietly. "The biggest mistake of my life." Nia turned away, unsettled by the raw honesty in his expression. This wasn't the defensive, self-justifying reaction she'd expected. This was something far more dangerous, genuine remorse that threatened to soften the protective shell she'd built around her wounded heart. "Your time's up. I have to get back to work." As she turned to leave, his hand caught her wrist, not restraining but requesting. The contact jolted through her system like a current, her body instantly traitorously responding to his touch. "Let me go," she said, the words carrying multiple meanings. "I can't." Marcus's eyes held hers, filled with a determination that had once made her believe they could conquer the world together. "I've tried for 5 years. I dated other women, threw myself into building my practice. Nothing filled the hole you left. Nothing. That's not my problem." Nia insisted, even as her pulse quickened beneath his fingertips. "Look me in the eyes and tell me you've never thought about what might have been." He challenged, his voice lowering to that intimate register that had always been her undoing. "Tell me you've never wondered if we gave up too easily." "Of course I have." The admission burst from Nia with unexpected force, her composure finally shattering. "I spent the first year hoping every knock at the door was you coming home. I rehearsed what I'd say when you finally called, but you never did, Marcus. You just disappeared from our lives." "I was wrong," he said, the simple acknowledgement more powerful than any elaborate excuse. "I was a coward, but I'm here now asking no begging for another chance. It's too late." The words hung between them heavy with finality, yet neither moved. Nia's wrist remained in his gentle grasp, the point of contact burning like a brand. "Is it?" Marcus's gaze dropped to her lips, his intention crystal clear. Warning bells clanged in Nia's mind, but her body hummed with anticipation. She should step back. She should walk away. She should protect herself from this man who had already proven he could devastate her. Instead, she remained motionless as he leaned down his lips, brushing hers with a tenderness that fractured something deep inside her chest. The kiss deepened. 5 years of absence and longing channeled into a connection that obliterated rational thought. Her hands moved of their own volition, one gripping his lapel while the other curled around his neck, pulling him closer. Marcus groaned against her mouth, the sound reverberating through her like an acoustic wave striking a tuning fork. The kiss transformed from tender to hungry, desperate, their tongues dancing in a primal rhythm of reconciliation and reclamation. His arms encircled her waist, lifting her slightly as he pressed her against the concrete planter, the evidence of his desire unmistakable against her hip. The garden door swung open with a mechanical whine, voices drifting toward them. Reality crashed back with jarring force. Nia wrenched herself away, chest-heaving, lips swollen from his kiss. "This changes nothing," she insisted, smoothing her blouse with trembling hands. Marcus, equally affected, ran a hand over his face, his breathing uneven. "It changes everything, Nia, and we both know it." Without another word, she fled to the elevator, punching the button repeatedly, as if greater force might speed its arrival. The doors finally opened, offering sanctuary from his magnetic presence. As they closed between them, Nia caught a final glimpse of Marcus still standing among the magnolias, his expression a complex mixture of hope and longing that stayed with her all the way back to her office. Kayla looked up as Nia returned her knowing gaze, taking in Nia's flushed cheeks and slightly disheveled appearance. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Nia replied automatically, though nothing could be further from the truth. She sank into her chair, fingers touching her lips unconsciously, still feeling the imprint of Marcus's kiss. The fierce anger that had sustained her for 5 years now warred with a dangerous desire to believe in second chances, in the possibility that the man who had once broken her heart might be worthy of trusting again. The most terrifying part wasn't that he had kissed her. The most terrifying part was that she had kissed him back. Chapter 4. The daughter between them. "Mommy, who's that man?" Lila's question froze Nia in place as she stopped arranging fruit on a plate for their Saturday breakfast. "What man, baby?" Nia asked, her voice carefully controlled as she turned to where her daughter stood by the kitchen window, peering through the blinds. "The one sitting in the black car. He's been there since I woke up." Nia's heart hammered against her ribs as she crossed the kitchen and discreetly peeked through the blinds. Sure enough, Marcus's sleek Audi was parked across the street, his unmistakable silhouette visible behind the wheel. A week had passed since their explosive encounter on the rooftop garden, a week of unanswered calls and text messages growing increasingly urgent. Just someone waiting for a friend, probably. Nia lied, guiding Lila back to the kitchen table. "Eat your breakfast, sweetie. We're meeting Aunt Simone at the park. At 10, remember?" Lila nodded, attention momentarily diverted by the prospect of playground time with her honorary aunt. Nia moved through the morning routine on autopilot, her mind preoccupied with the man outside their home. What was his endgame? How long did he plan to keep this up? The doorbell rang just as Nia was helping Lila tie her sneakers. Mother and daughter exchanged startled glances. "Stay here," Nia instructed, her tone brooking no argument. She didn't bother checking the peephole. She knew exactly who stood on the other side. Opening the door just wide enough to block the view inside, Nia confronted her ex-husband with ice in her veins. "You need to leave," she hissed. "Now." Marcus looked exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes, suggesting sleepless nights that matched her own. "I need to see her, Nia. She's my daughter too. You forfeited that, right when you disappeared from her life." His jaw tightened, a muscle working at the corner. "I never wanted to leave, Lila. That was your decision, not mine." "My decision," Nia's voice rose before she caught herself glancing back to ensure Lila hadn't followed. "You walked out on us. You signed divorce papers that gave me full custody without even fighting for visitation. Because you asked me to." Marcus's controlled facade cracked, revealing the raw pain beneath. You said a clean break would be easier on her than having me pop in and out of her life with my travel schedule. You said it would be less confusing. Mommy Lila's small voice interrupted their heated exchange. She had crept up behind Nia, curiosity overcoming obedience. Who's that? Nia's mind raced for an acceptable answer. But before she could formulate one, Marcus crouched to Lila's eye level, his expression softening with such naked emotion that Nia's throat tightened. "Hello, Lila," he said, voice gentle as a prayer. "I'm your dad." The silence that followed seemed to stretch into eternity. Lila's brow furrowed as she studied the stranger's face, searching for recognition. Nia held her breath, poised to gather her daughter into protective arms, if Marcus's revelation proved too shocking. "My dad lives far away," Lila finally said, her tone matter of fact. "That's why he can't come to my school stuff." The simplified explanation Nia had offered years ago when Lila first began noticing other children's fathers at school events. The partial truth that had seemed kinder than admitting her father had chosen to walk away. Marcus's eyes, so like Lila's own, filled with tears. He quickly blinked away. "I used to live far away," he agreed carefully. "But now I'm back in New Orleans and I'd really like to spend some time with you if that's okay." Lila looked up at Nia, seeking guidance in this unprecedented situation. Nia recognized the moment for what it was, a pivotal juncture that would shape her daughter's understanding of family and belonging. As much as she wanted to protect Lila from potential heartbreak, denying her the chance to know her father would be a different kind of wound. "Can he come to the park with us and Aunt Simone?" Lila asked, her voice small but hopeful. The innocent question left Nia momentarily speechless. Every protective instinct screamed to shield Lila from potential abandonment, to keep Marcus at arm's length until she could be certain of his intentions. But the cautious hope shining in her daughter's eyes, the natural curiosity about this missing piece of her life, made refusal impossible. "If that's what you want," Nia conceded, directing a warning glare at Marcus that promised retribution if he caused their daughter any pain. The relief on his face was palpable. "I'd love that, Lila. Thank you for inviting me." The drive to Audubon Park unfolded in strained silence, broken only by Lila's occasional question about Marcus's car, his watch, or whether he liked peanut butter sandwiches too. Nia white-knuckled the steering wheel of her own sedan, hyper-aware of Marcus following close behind his presence, throwing her carefully constructed single-parent routine into disarray. Simone's expression upon seeing Marcus approach alongside Nia and Lila was comical in its shock. Her wide eyes demanded an explanation that Nia could only answer with a subtle headshake, promising details later. "Simone, you remember Marcus?" Nia said, the forced casualness of her tone fooling. "No one. Hard to forget," Simone replied coolly, her protective instincts toward Nia evident in her stiff posture, "especially since you were just getting over him when I met you 5 years ago." Marcus accepted the barb with grace. "Good to see you again, Simone. I hear you've been a great friend to my family." The pointed use of "my family" didn't escape either woman. Simone's eyebrows rose, but before she could respond, Lila tugged impatiently at Nia's hand. "Can I go play now, Ethan? From my class is on the swings." "Stay where I can see you," Nia cautioned, watching her daughter dash across the grassy lawn toward the playground. An awkward trio remained tension, thickening the humid air between them. Simone broke first, muttering something about getting cold drinks for everyone, though Nia suspected her friend simply needed a moment to process the shock of Marcus's reappearance. "She's beautiful," Marcus said quietly once they were alone, his gaze following Lila as she climbed the jungle gym with fearless determination. "She has your smile and your dimples," Nia added before she could stop herself, "and your stubbornness." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Poor kid, double dose of hard-headedness. The small moment of shared parental pride caught Nia off guard, reminding her of conversations they'd once had, dreaming about the children they would raise together before reality intervened, before careers and grief and miscommunication tore them apart. "What exactly are you hoping to accomplish here?" Marcus Nia asked, needing clarity before they proceeded any further down this dangerous path. "You can't just walk back into her life and then disappear again when things get complicated, or when some big case takes you overseas for months." "I'm not going anywhere," he stated with quiet conviction. "I've opened my own practice here in New Orleans. Smaller firm, more control over my cases and schedule, no more international clients. I'm here to stay, Nia." The revelation stunned her. Marcus had been on track to make named partner at his prestigious firm, the culmination of ambitions he'd held since law school. "You left Bennett and Cole. Why would you give that up?" "Because none of it meant anything without you and Lila." His direct gaze held no artifice. "I chased success, thinking it would make me happy, make me worthy of the family I had. All it did was cost me everything that actually mattered." Before Nia could formulate a response to this seismic shift in understanding, A high-pitched scream cut through the air. Mother's instinct had her running toward the playground before conscious thought engaged Marcus, matching her stride for stride. Lila sat on the ground beneath the monkey bars, clutching her arm to her chest, face contorted in pain as a larger boy stood nearby, his defensive posture suggesting his involvement in her fall. Nia reached her daughter first, kneeling beside her. "What happened, baby?" "He pushed me," Lila sobbed, pointing at the boy who now looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Said it was his turn and I was too slow." Something dangerous flashed in Marcus's eyes as he absorbed the scene. With remarkable restraint, he crouched beside Lila, his large hand gently brushing her tears away. "Let me see your arm, princess," he said, the endearment falling naturally from his lips. With careful fingers, he examined the limb. Lila reluctantly extended, testing mobility and watching her reactions. "I don't think it's broken, but that's a nasty scrape." While he tended to Lila, the boy who had pushed her began to slink away. Marcus's voice, though quiet, carried an authority that stopped the child in his tracks. "Young man, I believe you. Owe my daughter an apology." The possessive claim my daughter sent an unexpected warmth blooming in Nia's chest, even as she remained focused on comforting Lila. The boy, recognizing the immovable force in Marcus's steady gaze, shuffled back to offer a mumbled sorry before beating a hasty retreat toward his distracted mother on a nearby bench. "Does it hurt bad?" Marcus asked Lila, his complete focus on her comfort, making it clear that in this moment, nothing else in the world mattered to him. Lila, tears subsiding in the face of such devoted attention, shook her head bravely. "It's not too bad now. Can you help me up?" Marcus's answering smile could have illuminated the darkest night. "Always, princess. Anytime you need me, I'll be right here to help you up." The simple promise delivered with such sincerity resonated well beyond the immediate circumstance. As he carefully lifted Lila to her feet, Nia watched the natural ease between father and daughter, the genetic connection that 5 years of absence couldn't erase. "You know what helps scrapes feel better?" Marcus asked, conspiratorially drawing a curious headshake from Lila. "Ice cream. Lots and lots of ice cream." Lila's face brightened immediately, pain forgotten in the prospect of an unexpected treat. "Can we, Mommy, please?" Caught between maternal caution and the undeniable joy spreading across her daughter's face, Nia found herself nodding. Just this once she qualified, though her warning was directed more at Marcus than Lila. As they walked toward the park's small cafe, Lila slipped her hand trustingly into Marcus's much larger one. The simple gesture, so natural, so profound, brought unexpected tears to Nia's eyes. She had spent years protecting her daughter from the pain of her father's absence. Yet in mere hours, Lila had begun building a bridge across that absence, with the resilience only children possess. Simone rejoined them, taking in the changed dynamic with raised eyebrows. "What did I miss?" "Daddy saved me from a mean boy." Lila announced the title, Daddy falling from her lips, as if she'd been using it all her life. "And now we're getting ice cream." Simone's shocked gaze met Nia's over Lila's head. "Did she just—" Nia nodded, emotions too complex to name tightening her throat. She did. Watching Marcus and Lila selecting ice cream flavors together, heads bent in serious deliberation, identical dimples appearing when they smiled. Nia confronted the truth she'd been avoiding since Marcus's reappearance in their lives. Despite her determination to keep him at a distance, an undeniable connection remained between father and daughter, a bond that neither time nor absence had completely severed. "I know that look," Simone murmured, sidling up beside Nia. "You're thinking about letting him back in." "No," Nia denied automatically, though without conviction. "I'm just giving Lila what she needs right now." Simone's skeptical expression said everything her discretion left unspoken. "Just be careful, honey. For both your sakes." Nia watched as Marcus wiped ice cream from Lila's chin with tender attentiveness, his expression holding a mixture of joy and regret for all the similar moments he'd missed. In that instant, she confronted the dangerous truth she'd been avoiding. Part of her wanted to believe in second chances. Part of her still responded to this man with a longing that 5 years of determined independence hadn't extinguished. And that was the most terrifying realization of all. Chapter 5. Dangerous Territory. The thunderstorm rolled across New Orleans, with vengeful fury lightning illuminating Nia's modest home. 3 weeks had passed since the playground incident, 3 weeks of careful negotiation, as Marcus gradually became a fixture in Lila's life, through supervised visits, Saturday morning pancake breakfasts, and school pickup duty. Nia checked her phone again, anxiety mounting with each passing minute. Marcus was supposed to drop Lila home an hour ago after their father-daughter trip to the aquarium. The storm had intensified, turning streets into treacherous rivers. When headlights finally swept across her living room, window relief washed through her. She yanked open the front door to find Marcus on her porch, soaked to the skin with Lila cradled protectively in his arms, their daughter fast asleep against his shoulder. "Sorry, we're late," he said. "Streets are flooding near the quarter. Had to take the long way around." Nia stepped aside to let them in, noticing how Marcus angled his body to shield Lila from the rain. The protective gesture, so instinctively paternal, stirred something she'd tried to keep walled off since his return. "She fell asleep in the car," Marcus explained as he gently transferred their daughter to Nia's arms. Exhausted after naming every fish in the aquarium, their hands brushed during the exchange, the brief contact sending awareness cascading through Nia's nerve endings. She stepped back quickly, needing distance from his presence. "You should get her into dry clothes," Marcus suggested. "She got a little wet when we ran from the car." Nia nodded and retreated to Lila's bedroom. By the time she returned, Marcus had removed his jacket and was standing awkwardly in her kitchen water pooling beneath his shoes. "You're soaked," she observed. "I might have some of your old sweats somewhere." "Don't worry about it," he interjected. "I should go before the flooding gets worse." A tremendous crack of thunder shook the house, followed immediately by the distinctive pop of transformer explosions. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the house into darkness. "Do you still keep candles in the hall closet?" Marcus asked, his voice closer than she'd expected. "Top shelf left side." She confirmed, surprised. He remembered such a detail after 5 years. Working together in the beam of her phone light, they established a warm glow throughout the living room. The domesticity of the moment created a dangerous illusion of continuity, as if the intervening years of separation had been merely a shared bad dream. "You can't drive in this," Nia finally conceded, gesturing toward the window, where rain lashed sideways. The couch pulls out. While Marcus changed into dry clothes, she provided Nia uncorked a bottle of wine. "You remembered," he commented when he emerged, nodding toward the Cabernet Sauvignon, his favorite. "Just happened to be what I had open," she lied, pouring a glass for each of them. One glass of wine became two, as the storm raged outside. The candlelight softened Marcus's features, highlighting the maturity the past 5 years had carved into his face. "I should check on Lila," Nia said when a particularly vicious thunderclap shook the windows. Lila slept peacefully despite the storm. Nia adjusted the light blanket, covering her, brushing dark curls from her forehead. How many nights had she stood just like this, wishing Marcus could share the profound wonder of the little person they'd created together. Lost in thought, she didn't hear him approach until his reflection appeared in the darkened window. Beside her, "She sleeps like you," Marcus observed, softly, completely dead to the world once she's out. The quiet intimacy of the moment, standing together in their daughter's doorway, as parents should, pierced Nia's defenses more effectively than any passionate embrace could have. Neither spoke as they returned to the living room, but something had shifted in the atmosphere between them, electricity charging the air like the storm outside. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked suddenly, voice dropped to an intimate register. "No," she lied, avoiding his penetrating gaze. Liar, Marcus challenged softly, moving closer. "I think about it constantly. The way you felt in my arms again. The sounds you made when I touched you. How perfectly we still fit together." Heat bloomed across Nia's skin, memories flooding her mind in vivid technicolor. "Don't," she whispered the word, lacking conviction. "Tell me you don't want this." Marcus murmured, his breath warm against her cheek, as one hand settled at her waist. "Tell me you don't want us." The touch ignited something primal within Nia. 5 years of denied desire combusted in an instant. Her wine glass clattered to the counter as she turned into his embrace mouth, seeking his with desperate hunger. Marcus responded immediately, lifting her against him as her legs wrapped around his waist. He pressed her against the kitchen counter, hands exploring curves that had changed subtly since he'd known them last. Nia gasped as his lips traced fire down her throat, her head falling back to grant better access. "Marcus," she breathed his name, both plea and permission. Reality intruded with brutal clarity as his hand slipped beneath her shirt. What was she doing? Surrendering to momentary passion couldn't erase the abandonment, the years of struggle, the painstaking reconstruction of her life without him. "Stop," she gasped, pushing against his chest. "I can't do this." Marcus immediately stilled. Nia, no tears threatened, emotion overwhelming her carefully constructed defenses. "I can't risk it. You destroyed me when you left. It took everything I had to rebuild my life to be strong for Lila. I can't go through that again." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by determination. Gently, he set her back on her feet. "I'm not that man anymore," he said. Each word weighted with conviction. "The one who ran when things got hard, the one who put career before family. That man died the day he realized what he'd thrown away." His thumbs brushed away tears Nia hadn't realized were falling. "I will spend every day proving that to you if you'll let me. However long it takes." The promise hung between them, fragile, yet powerful a bridge extending across the chasm their past had created. Nia couldn't bring herself to accept it, but neither could she reject it outright. "I need time," she whispered the admission, costing her pride but preserving her heart. Marcus nodded, reluctantly releasing her. "Time I can give you," he agreed, "but I'm not giving up Nia. Not this time. Not ever again." Outside, the storm continued unabated, nature's fury, matching the turbulent emotions raging within Nia's heart. Chapter 6. Competing Hearts. "You look stunning, Doctor." Ethan Brooks set his appreciative gaze taking in Nia's elegant black dress as he helped her into her seat at Commander's Palace. "I was surprised you finally agreed to dinner. I was beginning to think my charm had failed me." Nia smiled, smoothing the napkin across her lap. After the near miss with Marcus during the thunderstorm 2 weeks ago, she'd impulsively accepted Ethan's long-standing invitation, desperate to prove to herself that she wasn't falling back under her ex-husband's spell. "Your persistence wore me down," she replied, though guilt nagged at her conscience. Ethan was everything a woman could want: successful pediatric surgeon, philanthropist, attentive and kind. Yet as he poured her wine, Nia found herself making constant comparisons to another man. "I hope you don't mind," Ethan was saying, "but I took the liberty of ordering the tasting menu." "That sounds lovely," Nia answered automatically, her attention suddenly captured by a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Marcus stood in the entrance, devastating in a tailored gray suit. Beside him, a statuesque woman with flawless copper skin placed a perfectly manicured hand on his arm, leaning close to whisper something that made him smile. The sight sent a jolt of pure jealousy through Nia. "Nia, are you all right?" Ethan's concerned voice barely penetrated her consciousness. Before she could respond, Marcus was approaching their table, his date trailing behind. "Nia," he greeted, voice carefully neutral, though his eyes blazed. "What a surprise." Marcus. Nia acknowledged. "This is Dr. Ethan Brooks." "Ethan, this is Marcus Tate, Lila's father." Understanding dawned in Ethan's expression as he extended his hand. "A pleasure to meet you. Nia speaks highly of how you've reconnected with Lila." The blatant lie Nia had deliberately avoided mentioning Marcus's reappearance raised his eyebrows, but he accepted the handshake with cool civility. "Marcus, don't be rude," admonished, his companion stepping forward. "I'm Alicia Reynolds, Marcus's colleague." Her assessing gaze took in Nia from head to toe. "So you're the ex-wife. Marcus has mentioned you." "All good things, I hope," Nia replied, forcing composure. "He said you're an excellent mother," Alicia replied diplomatically. The backhanded compliment acknowledging Nia's parenting while omitting any reference to her as a woman didn't go unnoticed. Tension thickened the air until Ethan broke it with practiced ease. "We should let you get back to your dinner," Marcus finally said. "Enjoy your evening with Nia. She deserves someone who appreciates her value." As Marcus guided Alicia back to their table, Nia fought a completely irrational desire to follow them. The intensity of her reaction disturbed her. She had no right to jealousy. So why did the sight of him with another woman feel like betrayal? "Would you excuse me?" Nia murmured to Ethan during a lull between courses. Powder room. In the restroom's elegant sanctuary, Nia braced her hands against cool marble, confronting her reflection. What right did she have to the jealousy churning in her stomach? The door opened, and Alicia's reflection appeared in the mirror. "Thought I might find you hiding in here," she said. "He's still in love with you, you know." The blunt statement caught Nia off guard. "Excuse me, Marcus. He talks about you constantly." Nia would love this restaurant. Nia would appreciate this legal precedent. It's actually quite annoying. Nia blinked, struggling to reconcile this with the intimate body language she'd witnessed. "I don't understand. Are you two not?" A musical laugh escaped Alicia's perfect lips. "Dating, God, no. We're partners at the firm. I'm helping him establish the New Orleans office because my husband's been transferred here." She flashed a substantial diamond ring. Marcus's brilliant, handsome, and completely unavailable emotionally, because he's still obsessed with his ex-wife and daughter. Relief flooded Nia with such intensity. Her knees nearly buckled. "Then why did you act like—" "I was curious about the woman who still has him tied in knots after 5 years apart. I wanted to see if you deserved a second chance with him." When Nia returned to their table, Ethan studied her with perceptive eyes. "Everything all right?" "I'm sorry," Nia said sincerely. "You deserve a proper date with someone whose heart is fully available." Understanding softened Ethan's features. "He's a lucky man. I hope he realizes it this time." 3 days later, Nia sat in the elementary school auditorium program, clutched in nervous fingers as she waited for Lila's class play to begin. Her daughter had been cast as the narrator in The Life Cycle of Butterflies, a small speaking role that had Lila practicing with solemn dedication for weeks. The seat beside Nia remained empty until moments before the curtain rose, when Marcus slipped into it slightly breathless. "Sorry I'm late. Court ran over." The fact that he'd clearly rushed to make it touch something deep in Nia's heart. This was not the man who had missed recitals because work took precedence. "You made it," Nia acknowledged, squeezing his hand in reassurance. "That's what matters." The simple touch sent awareness cascading through both of them, Marcus's fingers interlaced with hers, his thumb tracing small circles on her palm. Neither looked at the other, but electricity arced between them in the darkened auditorium. When Lila stepped forward for her first narration, spine straight and voice clear, despite nervousness, pride swelled in Nia's chest. Beside her, Marcus's grip tightened, his emotion palpable. "She's amazing," he whispered. "She is." Nia agreed, the shared recognition creating another thread in the complex tapestry being rewoven between them. Backstage after the performance, they found Lila, who launched herself into their combined embrace with infectious joy. "Did you see me? Did you hear how loud I spoke, Mrs. Jenkins said I projected." "Projected, sweetheart," Nia corrected gently. "And yes, you were perfect." The best narrator in the history of Butterfly Plays, Marcus confirmed, his face transformed by pure adoration. Lila darted away to greet a friend. Nia and Marcus found themselves alone in a quiet corner of the chaotic backstage area. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "For what?" "For raising her to be so confident, so kind." His gaze held Nia's with an intensity that made her breath catch. "For doing what I was too selfish to participate in." The raw honesty in his voice disarmed Nia's usual defenses. "She makes it easy to be a good parent," she admitted, "even when it's hard." "I meant what I said the other night." Marcus continued, voice dropping to ensure privacy. "I'm not the same man who left you. I'll spend a lifetime proving that if you'll let me." The drive home unfolded in comfortable silence, Lila chattering happily until exhaustion claimed her head, nodding against her booster seat. "I'll carry her in," Marcus offered when they reached Nia's house, carefully lifting their sleeping daughter. Together they performed the parental dance of changing a mostly asleep child into pajamas, a synchronicity in their movements that belied their years of separation. With Lila tucked in, they stood in the hallway outside her room, the domesticity of the moment, both painful and precious. "I should go," Marcus said, though he made no move toward the door. "Yes," Nia agreed, equally stationary. The air between them thickened with unspoken possibilities. 5 years of absence, 1 month of cautious reconnection, and now this precipice upon which they stood. Nia. Marcus began her name, both question and plea. She answered by closing the distance between them, hands finding his chest as his arms encircled her waist. Their lips met with the relief of wanderers finding shelter after too long in the wilderness, the kiss deepening instantly into something hungry and desperate. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me this isn't just tonight," he whispered. "Tell me we're rebuilding something real." The question demanded honesty. Nia wasn't yet ready to voice her heart, still protected by walls built from past pain. "I don't know what we're doing," she admitted, "but I'm not ready for you to leave. Not tonight." It wasn't a promise of forever, not the full reconciliation Marcus clearly hungered for. But as his eyes darkened with a combination of desire and cautious hope, Nia realized she had taken the first true step toward possibility, toward believing that sometimes love deserved a second chance to get it right. Chapter 7. The Breaking Storm. 3 blissful weeks passed after the school play, each day weaving Nia and Marcus more tightly back into the fabric of each other's lives. They established a delicate routine, shared dinners with Lila, stolen moments of passion after their daughters slept, cautious conversations about a future neither was quite ready to fully claim, but both increasingly desired. Nia found herself waking each morning with a lightness in her chest she'd forgotten could exist. Marcus had been relentlessly present, not just for the passionate nights that left her trembling and sated, but for the mundane moments that truly comprised a shared life. Doctor appointments, grocery shopping, helping with Lila's science project. "You're humming, Kayla," observed one morning at the office. "I haven't heard you hum since well ever." Nia hadn't even realized she'd been doing it, some old jazz standard Marcus had played while cooking dinner the night before. "Things are good," she admitted. The understatement of the year, her phone buzzed with a text from the man himself. "Lunch today? Have news to share. Important." By noon, however, her hard-won peace was shattered by the last voice she expected to hear in the reception area of Thompson and Blake. "I need to speak with Nia." Carter immediately demanded, a cultured voice that had featured prominently in Nia's early marriage nightmares. "I know she works here." Eleanor Tate, Marcus's mother and Nia's former mother-in-law, stood imperiously at the front desk, draped in expensive linen and radiating the particular brand of Southern gentility that concealed steel beneath silk. "Mrs. Tate," Nia greeted, professional smile firmly in place, despite her racing heart. "This is unexpected." The conference room Nia selected overlooked the Mississippi, 5 years since she'd last faced Eleanor Tate at the divorce proceedings, where the older woman had squeezed her son's shoulder in unmistakable approval as the judge finalized their separation. "I understand you've allowed Marcus back into your life." Eleanor began without preamble, "and into my granddaughter's life." "Allowed isn't the word I'd choose," Nia replied carefully. "Marcus is Lila's father. He has every right to know his daughter." Of course, Eleanor agreed with a smile that never reached her eyes. "What concerns me, Lila, is that he seems to be under the illusion that rekindling a romantic relationship with you is wise. With all due respect, Mrs. Tate, that's between Marcus and me. Is it Marcus has worked extraordinarily hard to rebuild his life after the unfortunate end to your marriage. He's finally in a position to achieve everything he's capable of. I'd hate to see him derailed again by emotional decisions." The implication that their marriage had somehow hindered Marcus's success, rather than fueled it, struck Nia like a physical blow. Derailed. "I supported him through law school. I moved 3 times for his career. I was pregnant with his child while he was building his precious reputation at Bennett & Cole. Did he tell you about Lauren?" Eleanor asked, her tone deceptively casual. "Lovely girl, daughter of my dear friend Diane Warwick. They were quite serious until just a few months ago." Each word was precisely calculated to inflict maximum damage to Nia's newly budding trust. If they'd been serious just months ago, how genuine could his claims of 5 years of unwavering love possibly be? "I don't believe you," Nia said, fighting to keep her voice steady. No, Eleanor withdrew her phone, showing Nia a photo. "Christmas at our house just 5 months ago." The image showed Marcus with his arm around a stunning blonde whose head rested against his shoulder. They stood before a decorated tree, the perfect holiday couple. Nia's stomach churned with irrational jealousy and very rational doubt. He's been offered a tremendous opportunity managing partner at the new Singapore office, but he's hesitating because of this nostalgia for your former relationship. Singapore. The word echoed in Nia's mind like a death knell across the world. "He hasn't mentioned any job in Singapore," she said faintly. The conference room door opened, suddenly revealing Marcus himself, expression darkening the soul. "Mother, this is unexpected." The cold formality in his voice offered Nia a thin thread of hope. Clearly, this ambush hadn't been coordinated between them. "Marcus, darling." Eleanor's tone transformed instantly into maternal warmth. "I was just catching up with Nia. Nia, I'm sorry to interrupt your workday, but when you didn't show for lunch, I was concerned." Nia glanced at her watch, startled to discover their scheduled meeting time had come and gone. "I'm sorry. We were discussing your future." Marcus's gaze sharpened. "What exactly did you tell her?" he demanded of his mother. "Only the truth, darling, about Lauren, about Singapore things. A woman contemplating a future with you deserves to know." Nia watched emotions cascade across Marcus's face. Shock. Anger. Determination. He crossed to her side. "Whatever she told you, let me explain." "I think your mother explained quite thoroughly," Nia interrupted. "You should have told me about the job offer, Marcus. And about Lauren." "No." Marcus's voice carried the authority that had once irritated her, but now commanded her attention. "We'll discuss it now. Mother, thank you for your concern, but your interference isn't welcome. Please see yourself out." Eleanor's eyes widened at the dismissal. "Marcus James Tate, I did not raise you to speak to me that way. No, you raised me to value status over happiness." He countered, "to choose career advancement over family, to walk away from my marriage when things got difficult. And I'm done living by those values. They cost me everything that mattered." The raw honesty in his declaration penetrated the doubt, beginning to crystallize around Nia's heart. Still, questions remained. "Singapore, Marcus. Were you going to mention that before or after I let myself fall in love with you again?" "That's what I wanted to discuss at lunch," he said quietly. "I was offered the position 3 days ago. I'm turning it down, Nia. I already called this morning to decline, but it's a tremendous opportunity." Nia protested, confusion replacing anger. "Managing partner in an international office. It's everything you ever wanted." "No," Marcus corrected gently. "It's everything I thought I wanted. Everything I was raised to want. What I actually want is right here in New Orleans. You, Lila, the family we're rebuilding. And Lauren," she asked, needing to address the blonde elephant in the room. "A brief relationship that ended because I was still in love with my ex-wife Marcus," answered without hesitation. Something Lauren realized long before I was willing to admit it. Eleanor gathered her designer handbag with dignified displeasure. "I can see my presence isn't appreciated. Marcus, when this second mistake ends exactly like the first, don't expect sympathy." Her gaze shifted to Nia. "He left once before when things got difficult. Men rarely change their essential nature." The parting shot struck with precision, reopening Nia's deepest fear that despite apparent transformation, Marcus might abandon her again when faced with real adversity. After Eleanor's exit, Nia moved to the window, needing physical distance to process the emotional bombardment. "You should have told me about Singapore," she said finally, "and about Lauren." "I was going to tell you about both today," Marcus explained. "The Singapore offer just came through, and I wanted you to know I'd already declined it. As for Lauren, she was my attempt to move on when I thought I'd never get a second chance with you." "Your mother thinks I'm holding you back," Nia said, voicing the insecurity that had plagued their first marriage. "My mother has never understood what truly matters in life." Marcus replied with quiet intensity, "I won't let her influence our future. Not again." He reached for her hand, relief evident when she didn't pull away. "I'm not the man who left you," he promised. "I've spent 5 years learning that lesson the hard way. I need time to think," Nia said finally, neither rejecting nor accepting his declaration. "This is all happening so fast." Disappointment flickered across Marcus's features, quickly replaced by understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere literally or figuratively. But know this, there is no opportunity, no job, no amount of money or prestige worth losing you again. I've already made that mistake once. I won't repeat it." The promise hung between them, its weight, both reassuring and terrifying. Because despite everything, one question remained: when truly tested, would this new, improved Marcus Tate prove as steady as his words, or would history inevitably repeat itself? Chapter 8. Family Battlegrounds. "You can't seriously be considering getting back together with him," Simone said, stirring her coffee with more force than necessary. The Sunday brunch that had been their tradition since Nia's divorce had turned tense the moment Nia mentioned Marcus had started staying overnight. "Have you forgotten what he put you through?" Nia sighed, glancing around the crowded cafe to ensure no one was listening. "People change, Simone. He's different now." "Is he?" Simone leaned forward, eyes intense with protective concern. "Or is he just saying what you want to hear until he gets comfortable again? Remember how you couldn't get out of bed for weeks after he left? How I had to come over every morning to make sure Lila got to preschool because you were barely functioning?" The harsh reminder of her darkest days stung, mainly because Nia couldn't deny the truth in Simone's words. The depression that had followed Marcus's departure had nearly consumed her. Without Simone's intervention, who knows what might have happened to her or Lila. "That's not fair," Nia protested weakly. "It's been 5 years. Exactly my point. 5 years where he made no effort to be in Lila's life. 5 years you spent rebuilding everything he shattered. And now he waltzes back in and expects a second chance." Simone shook her head. "Men like Marcus don't change their fundamental nature, honey. When things get tough again, and they will, he'll revert to type." The warning echoed uncomfortably in Nia's mind as she drove home, resonating with her own deepest fears. Was she being naive? Setting herself and Lila up for even greater heartbreak? Her phone chimed with a text from Marcus: "Meeting with potential investors running long. Might miss dinner. Save me a plate." A small thing. A courteous heads up rather than the last-minute cancellations that had characterized the end of their marriage, yet it did little to quiet the doubts Simone had awakened. How many times had similar messages preceded his complete emotional withdrawal during their first marriage? How many dinners had grown cold while she waited? Lila eventually falling asleep before her father made it home. When Nia arrived home, another surprise awaited. A sleek BMW parked in her driveway, its driver leaning casually against the hood. Eleanor Tate impeccable as always in designer linen despite the sweltering New Orleans afternoon. "I thought we might have a chat, just us girls," Eleanor said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Before things progress any further with my son." Nia's spine stiffened. "Lila's at a playdate. I need to pick her up soon. This won't take long." Eleanor followed Nia uninvited into the house, her critical gaze sweeping over the modest living room. "I see Marcus has been spending time here. His jacket." She nodded toward the back of a dining chair, where Marcus had draped his blazer the night before. "What do you want?" Eleanor Nia asked directly, too emotionally drained for pretense. "To protect my son." Eleanor's voice hardened. "Marcus is finally getting his career back on track after the setback of your divorce. He's been offered the Singapore position he's worked toward for years. I won't let him throw it away over misplaced guilt or nostalgia." Singapore. The word dropped like a stone in Nia's stomach. He hasn't mentioned any position in Singapore. Triumph flashed briefly in Eleanor's eyes. "No, how interesting. The offer came through last week. Managing Partner International Division. The culmination of everything he's worked for. If it's so important to him, I'm sure he'll tell me himself." Nia countered, fighting to maintain composure as her insecurities multiplied. "Perhaps." Eleanor opened her designer handbag, withdrawing an envelope. "These might interest you. Photos from the Charleston legal conference last Christmas. Marcus was quite taken with Lauren Warwick. They made such a handsome couple." Despite herself, Nia's gaze dropped to the photos Eleanor spread across the coffee table. Marcus at various events, arm draped around a stunning blonde. Their body language spoke of intimacy and comfort, of shared jokes and private moments. One image particularly painful, Marcus kissing the woman beneath mistletoe, both laughing carefree in a way Nia hadn't seen him in years. They dated for nearly 8 months. Eleanor continued, each word precisely calculated to inflict maximum damage. She ended things in March. Felt he wasn't fully committed. Interesting timing, isn't it? She breaks his heart, and weeks later, he has this convenient reunion with you. Nia gathered the photos with trembling hands, returning them to the envelope. I think you should leave. He'll always choose career over family, Nia. It's how I raised him. Eleanor's parting shot landed with surgical precision as she moved toward the door. Don't delude yourself into thinking you're enough to change that. Alone in the sudden silence of her home, Nia confronted the ugly doubts festering beneath her cautious hope. Marcus had spoken of no other women, had implied his love for her, had remained constant through their separation. The evidence of Lauren suggested otherwise. And Singapore, a position halfway around the world he'd concealed entirely. What else wasn't he telling her? The front door opened, Marcus's voice calling cheerfully, "Nia, you home?" He appeared in the living room doorway, face lighting with the smile that still weakened her knees. Meeting wrapped early after all. Thought I might pick up Lila from her playdate so you could rest. The thoughtfulness of the gesture only intensified Nia's confusion. This attentive, considerate man seemed worlds away from both the workaholic who had abandoned their marriage and the ambitious attorney Eleanor had described. When were you going to tell me about Singapore? The question escaped before she could modulate her tone. Marcus's expression shifted, confusion followed by understanding. My mother was here. Not a question. She showed me photos too, of Lauren. You looked happy together. 8 months is a serious relationship, Marcus. He sank onto the couch, running a hand over his face. I was going to tell you about both the job offer and Lauren at dinner tonight. I wanted to explain in person. Explain what Nia demanded, her voice sharp with hurt. That you've been hiding major parts of your life. That this, she gestured between them, is just your rebound after she dumped you. That's not fair, Marcus protested, frustration edging into his voice. Isn't it? You said you never stopped loving me, that you spent 5 years trying to fill the hole I left in your life. Yet these photos tell a different story. I dated other people. So did you, Marcus countered it. That doesn't make what I feel for you any less real. Lauren ended things precisely because she realized I was still in love with my ex-wife. And Singapore. When were you planning to mention that little detail? Before or after I let myself believe we might have a future? Rising, Marcus paced the small living room. The offer came through 3 days ago. I'm turning it down, Nia. I've already drafted the email. Turning it down. Nia stared at him in disbelief. It's everything you've worked for. Your mother said. My mother, Marcus interrupted, has never understood what actually matters. Money, status, power, that's her holy trinity. She watched my father choose family over career advancement and never forgave him for it, even though he was happier running his small practice than he ever would have been as a corporate partner. He knelt before Nia, taking her hands in his. 5 years ago, I made the wrong choice. I followed my mother's values instead of my own. I won't make that mistake again. The raw honesty in his voice penetrated Nia's defensive anger, but doubt lingered. How do I know that's true? How do I know when things get difficult again? When your big cases conflict with Lila's events, when the baby's crying all night and I'm exhausted and hormonal, you won't decide. We're too much trouble. Baby Marcus's expression transformed, hope and fear battling in his features. Are you? Nia froze, realizing what she'd inadvertently revealed. She wasn't pregnant, had no reason to think she might be. But the slip exposed her subconscious fears. History repeating itself, complete with another child, Marcus might abandon. No, she admitted quietly, but it could happen, and I can't do that alone again, Marcus. I won't. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by determination. You won't have to. I'm not that man anymore, Nia. Let me prove it to you. Not with words, but with choices. Day after day, year after year. The promise hung between them, powerful in its simplicity, yet fragile in the face of their complicated past. Before Nia could respond, her phone rang. Lila's playdate mother, wondering when she'd be picking up her daughter. I'll get her, Marcus volunteered. Take some time. Think about what I said. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I was already declining Singapore, before my mother's interference. Some opportunities aren't worth the cost. After he left, Nia sat in the lingering silence, torn between wanting to believe in second chances and fearing she was setting herself up for devastation. Whose voice, Should she trust Simone's protective warnings, Eleanor's poisonous insinuations, or the man who claimed to have changed, who looked at her with eyes that still saw the person she'd been before life hardened her? The choice before her was terrifyingly simple. Trust or safety, love or self-protection. Risk everything again, or forever close the door on what they might rebuild together. Chapter 9. Shattered Dreams Again. He's already accepted the position, Simone said, sliding her phone across the kitchen table to Nia. I'm sorry, honey, but you needed to know. Nia stared at the LinkedIn update on the screen, the digital announcement crisp and devastating in its simplicity. Marcus Tate has a new position as managing partner at Bennett & Cole Singapore division. 3 days had passed since Eleanor's visit and their heated confrontation. 3 days during which Marcus had texted and called repeatedly, each message more urgent than the last. 3 days Nia had spent in emotional limbo, wanting to believe his declarations, yet frightened by how quickly her heart had reinvested in possibilities that now seemed as insubstantial as morning mist. When did he post this? Nia asked, voice remarkably steady, despite the earthquake rumbling through her chest. This morning, Simone confirmed, watching her friend with worried eyes. Nia, I know you were starting to hope, but men like Marcus don't change their fundamental nature. You deserve someone who puts you first from the beginning, not as an afterthought, once their ambition is satisfied. The echo of Eleanor's parting shot that men rarely change their essential nature sent chills down Nia's spine. She had wanted so desperately to believe Marcus was the exception that love and loss had transformed him into someone who valued family above career advancement. The evidence on her friend's phone suggested otherwise. Has he seen Lila since your fight? Simone asked gently. Nia shook her head. He was supposed to take her to the aquarium yesterday, but I asked Mrs. Lopez to tell him we weren't home when he came by. The memory of their daughter's disappointment, carefully hidden behind brave smiles, but evident in subdued behavior all evening, twisted the knife of guilt deeper into Nia's heart. I just needed time to figure out how to explain this to her. Again. Her phone buzzed for the 4th time that hour, Marcus's name illuminating the screen again. She silenced it. What was left to say, his actions spoke with undeniable clarity. When faced with choosing between family and ambition, he had made the same devastating choice as before. I should get to work, Nia said, rising from the table with robotic precision. The Wilson deposition. The sudden wave of nausea struck without warning. Nia barely made it to the kitchen sink before retching violently, cold sweat breaking out across her forehead. Nia Simone was beside her, instantly cool hand against her clammy neck. Are you okay? Must be a stomach bug. Nia managed, though even as the words left her mouth, a different possibility took terrifying shape in her mind. Lila had something similar last week. Simone's skeptical tone made it clear she wasn't buying the explanation. Or it could be that you and Marcus haven't exactly been careful during your reconciliation. The simple observation crystallized what Nia had been subconsciously avoiding her. Missed period, the tender breasts, the inexplicable fatigue she'd attributed to emotional stress. The timing aligned perfectly with that first night of reconciliation, after Lila's school play, when passion had overwhelmed caution and protection had been an afterthought to desire. Oh God, Nia whispered, gripping the counter as the room tilted beneath her feet. I can't be. Not now. Not like this. Not when history was repeating itself in the cruelest possible way, Marcus choosing career advancement over family, leaving her to face another pregnancy alone. The symmetry was too perfect, too devastating to be coincidence. Let's not panic, Simone said, guiding Nia to a chair with gentle firmness. First we confirm, then we decide next steps. Okay. An hour later, Nia stared at the double pink lines on the plastic stick, their clarity leaving no room for denial or misinterpretation. Pregnant. With Marcus's child. Again. What are you going to do? Simone asked, perched on the edge of the bathtub beside her. The question carried weight beyond the immediate situation. What would she do about the pregnancy, about Marcus? About the life she'd rebuilt so carefully now, threatened by the same pattern that had shattered it before? I don't know, Nia admitted the uncertainty, terrifying for a woman who had survived by maintaining careful control over every aspect of her life since the divorce. But I need to tell him, before he leaves for Singapore. Simone's expression suggested she wanted to argue but recognized the futility. Want me to stay with Lila tonight? Nia nodded gratefully, already texting Marcus a message she'd been avoiding for days. We need to talk. My place. 8:00 p.m. His response was immediate. I'll be there. Thank you. The knock came at precisely 8:00, Marcus's punctuality, a remnant of his professional precision. Nia opened the door with carefully constructed composure, determined to maintain control of her emotions, despite the bombshell she carried. Nia, her name on his lips, still held the reverence that had been her undoing these past weeks. "Thank you for seeing me. I've been worried." He looked exhausted, dark circles beneath eyes that searched her face with desperate intensity. Nia stepped back to let him enter. Maintaining physical distance she hoped would translate to emotional discipline. "Congratulations on the Singapore position," she said, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "Quite an achievement." Confusion flashed across Marcus's features. "What are you talking about? Don't insult my intelligence, Marcus." Nia retrieved her phone, pulling up the LinkedIn announcement Simone had shown her. "You made your choice. Again. I just wish you'd had the courage to tell me yourself, instead of letting me discover it online." Understanding dawned in his expression, followed immediately by dismay. "Nia, I didn't post that. I didn't accept the position. Your profile says otherwise," she countered, thrusting the phone toward him. Marcus scanned the screen, anger replacing confusion. "My mother," he said quietly, the two words containing volumes of realization. "She must have accessed my account." Somehow Nia's voice rose, disbelief warring with hurt. "Nia, I swear to you, I declined the offer explicitly and officially." The conviction in his voice planted seeds of doubt in Nia's certainty. "Why would she?" "Because she's determined to ensure I follow the path she believes I should." Marcus interrupted, running a hand over his close-cropped hair in frustration. "She's never accepted that I might want something different than what she envisions for me." He pulled out his own phone, scrolling rapidly, before extending it toward Nia. "Here, my email declining the position sent 3 days ago, and their response acknowledging my decision. I never accepted, Nia. I told you the truth." The evidence was irrefutable, time-stamped correspondence that predated their fight. Explicit rejection of the very opportunity Eleanor had weaponized against their reconciliation. Relief flooded Nia's system so intensely, her knees threatened to buckle. "I don't understand," she said, sinking onto the sofa. "Why would your mother go to such lengths?" "Because she's terrified I'll make the same choice my father did," Marcus explained, keeping a respectful distance despite his obvious desire to bridge the gap between them. "Choose love over ambition, family over success." He walked away from a partnership track to start his own small practice to have time for us. She never forgave him for choosing the simpler path, but he seemed happy. Nia recalled remembering the warm gentleman who had welcomed her into their family with open arms, so different from his status-conscious wife. He was happy, Marcus confirmed softly, something my mother never understood. After he died, she transferred all her ambitions to me, determined I wouldn't waste my potential, as she believed he had. The picture clarified with devastating clarity the pressure Marcus had lived under, the expectations that had shaped his early career choices, and ultimately contributed to the destruction of their marriage. "I'm nothing like her, Nia," he continued, passion, infusing his words with undeniable sincerity. "But I was becoming her, valuing the wrong things, measuring success by the wrong metrics. Losing you and Lila was my wake-up call. I won't make that mistake again." Something in his demeanor, the absolute certainty perhaps, or the vulnerability beneath his strength, finally penetrated the armor of doubt Nia had constructed around her heart. "I'm pregnant," she said suddenly, the declaration escaping before she could consider its impact. Marcus froze, expression cycling rapidly through shock, disbelief, and finally incandescent joy. "Pregnant," he whispered, as if speaking the word too loudly might cause it to evaporate. "We're having a baby." The wonder in his voice, so different from the conflicted response to her first pregnancy years ago, when he'd been concerned about timing and career impact, pierced Nia's last defenses. This was not the same man who had left her. This was a man transformed by loss, remade by regret, determined not to squander a second chance at the life that truly mattered. "Yes," she confirmed, tears blurring her vision. About 6 weeks along, Marcus moved toward her slowly, as if approaching a wild creature that might bolt, dropping to his knees before her on the sofa. With infinite tenderness, he placed a trembling hand against her still flat abdomen. "Our baby," he breathed, awe transforming his features. "Nia, I know my track record doesn't inspire confidence, but I swear to you I will be here for every moment, every appointment, every milestone, every middle-of-the-night craving. You will never face a single instant of this pregnancy alone." The intensity of his vow terrified Nia, even as it healed ancient wounds. This was everything she had needed to hear 5 years ago, everything she had dreamed of during those lonely nights when grief threatened to consume her. Yet the very perfection of his response triggered deep-seated fears. What if this was just beautiful words? What if, when reality became challenging, he reverted to type? "I'm scared, Marcus," she admitted, vulnerability coating each word. Last time I was a selfish, ambitious fool who didn't recognize the treasure I held," he interrupted gently. "This time I know exactly what I stand to lose." There is nothing, no job, no opportunity, no amount of success worth sacrificing our family again. He reached for her hand, hope and determination evident in every line of his body. Marry me, Nia. Not because of the baby, but because these weeks together have shown us both what we can be when we truly choose each other. Let me spend the rest of my life proving worthy of this second chance. The proposal, his third since returning to her life, hung between them like a tangible presence. Before Nia could formulate a response, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen so intense, she doubled over with a cry of distress. Nia Marcus's voice seemed to come from a great distance as another wave of pain crashed through her. "What's wrong, the baby?" She gasped, horror washing over her as she recognized the familiar cramping from 5 years before. "No, please not again." Warm wetness spread between her thighs, the unmistakable harbinger of potential tragedy. Marcus's face drained of color as he registered the significance, but his voice remained steady as he gathered her into his arms. "Hospital." Now, he said, already moving toward the door, with Nia cradled against his chest. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Stay with me." Chapter 10. Rebirth Through Fire. Nia woke to the steady beep of hospital monitors and the weight of a hand clasping hers. Sunlight filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting golden stripes across Marcus's sleeping form. He'd pulled a chair directly beside her bed. His body bent forward, head resting on the mattress beside their intertwined fingers. The events that had brought her here filtered back in fragments, the revelation of her pregnancy, the terrifying cramping, the rushed trip to the emergency room. The doctor's cautious optimism threatened miscarriage, but a heartbeat detected. When his eyes met hers, the naked vulnerability, there stole her breath. "You're awake," he said. Relief evident in every syllable. "How do you feel physically or emotionally?" The question emerged with unexpected honesty. Both Nia answered, thumb-tracing gentle circles on his palm. "Either, whatever you're willing to share." The open-ended nature of his response, simply making space for whatever she needed, cracked something rigid within Nia's chest. This was not the same man who had fled her hospital room 5 years ago, unable to face their shared grief. "I don't know if I can do this again," she admitted, forcing eye contact despite the pain her words would cause. "The pregnancy. Us, the hope that things could be different. It's all too familiar. The same patterns, the same fears." Marcus's expression reflected not anger at her doubt, but profound understanding. "I deserve that question," he acknowledged. "But Nia, the similarity in circumstances isn't a sign we're repeating history. It's an opportunity to prove we've changed, to make different choices this time." "You say that now," Nia countered softly, "but when the baby comes, when work gets demanding, how do I know you won't make the same choice you did before?" "I can't give you certainty," he finally said, honesty evident in every word. "I can only show you day by day, choice by choice, that I've learned what truly matters." "Doctor." Nguyen entered chart in Hunt. The examination that followed was thorough. Throughout, Marcus remained a steady presence, attentive without hovering. "The bleeding has stopped, which is excellent news, Doctor," Nguyen concluded. "However, given your history and the current situation, I'm recommending complete bed rest for the next 2 weeks, followed by very restricted activity." 2 weeks, Nia's mind raced through the practical implications. Lila's care work obligations. "Doctor, I'm a single parent with a full-time job. I can't just—" "You're not doing this alone," Marcus interjected firmly. "I'll take care of everything. Lila, your work commitments, whatever you need." The possessive, our baby so casually claimed, so different from his detached response to her first pregnancy, stirred complex emotions in Nia's chest. This was what she had needed 5 years ago. 3 days later, settled in her bedroom at home, Nia watched with grudging admiration as Marcus orchestrated their new reality with surprising competence. He had transformed her dining room into a temporary office, the refrigerator stocked with healthy meals. Most surprisingly, he had moved his own essential files into a corner of her bedroom, creating a makeshift workspace where he could handle urgent legal matters without leaving her side. It was during the quiet evenings with Lila sleeping down the hall that the walls between them gradually thinned. Conversations that had once seemed impossible unfolded with painful but necessary honesty. "I never properly grieved our first loss," Marcus admitted one night. "I told myself I was being strong for you, but the truth is I couldn't face my own pain." "Why didn't you fight for us?" Nia whispered the question that had haunted her through countless sleepless nights. "When I asked for the divorce, why did you just agree?" "Because I thought it was what you wanted," Marcus answered. "You seemed so certain, so determined to be free of me, and part of me believed you deserved better than a husband who couldn't even be there during our worst moment." The revelation that he had interpreted her ultimatum as a genuine desire rather than a desperate plea for him to prove her wrong shifted something fundamental in Nia's understanding of their past. "I didn't want you to leave," she confessed, tears flowing freely. I wanted you to refuse to fight for us to show me I mattered more than Bennett and Cole." Marcus moved from the chair to the edge of the bed. When she didn't pull away, he gently gathered her hands in his. "I'm fighting now," he said, voice rough with emotion. 5 years too late, but with everything I have." The weeks that followed tested their newly forming bonds. When light spotting returned in her 11th week, bringing with it the specter of their previous loss, Marcus held her through the night as they waited for morning and another emergency ultrasound. This time they received the news together. Baby still present, heartbeat strong. On a crisp autumn evening in her 20th week, they gathered in the doctor's office for the anatomy scan. Lila bounced with excitement beside them. "It's a boy, doctor," Wynne announced. "Healthy development, strong heartbeat, all measurements right on target." A brother, Lila exclaimed, clapping her hands in delight. "I'm going to teach him all about butterflies and dinosaurs." Later that night, Marcus led Nia to the porch swing that had become their favorite spot for evening conversations. "I have something for you," he said. From his pocket he withdrew a folded document. "Deed to the office building on St. Handred, Charles Avenue. It's going to be the permanent home of Tate Family Law, specializing in compassionate representation for families navigating divorce, custody, and adoption. Our practice, if you want," Marcus continued. "Your paralegal experience would be invaluable, and the building has enough space for a small daycare area. We'd be together, Nia, building something that serves families while preserving our own." From his other pocket he produced a small velvet box. Not new, she realized as he opened it to reveal her original engagement ring, the one she'd returned 5 years earlier. "This represents our past, both the beautiful beginning and the painful ending," Marcus said, turning the band to show her 2 small birthstones added on either side of the central diamond, Lila's birthstone, and a space for our sons. "Our past, our present, our future. If you'll have me, Nia, if you'll let me come home for good." "Yes," she whispered, tears blurring her vision as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Yes, to all of it." 1 year later, Nia Carter stood before the full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who gazed back at her. The ivory sheath dress skimmed curves that had changed subtly through pregnancy and childbirth. Its lace overlay catching the afternoon sunlight, her dark curls had been arranged in a halo of controlled chaos, adorned with tiny sprigs of baby's breath. "You look beautiful," Mommy Lila said from the doorway, resplendent in her junior bridesmaid dress. At 8, she carried herself with the solemn dignity of a child, entrusted with escorting her 6-month-old brother down the aisle in his decorated wagon. The ceremony unfolded in the garden of their new home, a gracious Creole cottage with space for family gatherings and a sprawling backyard. The conspicuous absence of Eleanor Tate was a testament to Marcus's commitment to protecting their hard-won happiness. 5 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life." Marcus began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "I walked away from the greatest gift I'd ever been given. Your love, our family, the life we'd begun building together." He took her hands in his, the gesture reminiscent of that first shocking proposal in the hotel room, yet transformed by all they'd endured together since. "I vow to choose you not just once at this altar, but every single day through whatever life brings us, in joy and in grief, in success and in struggle. I vow to be present, to be patient, to be your partner in all things." Tears slipped down Nia's cheeks as she squeezed his hands, her own vows rising from a heart, finally healed enough to trust completely. "I choose you too. Not the man you were, but the man you've become through hard-won wisdom and genuine change. I vow to build with you a life of passion and purpose, to create a home where our children learn the true meaning of love by watching us demonstrate it daily." As they exchanged rings, her original engagement band redesigned with birthstones for both their children, Nia felt the final pieces of her long fragmented heart fuse back together stronger at the broken places. Later, as they swayed together under twinkling garden lights for their first dance, Marcus pulled Nia closer, his lips brushing her ear. "What are you thinking?" he asked, sensing her momentary introspection. Nia smiled up at him, the joy in her eyes matched by the peaceful certainty in her heart. That sometimes the most beautiful beginnings require the most painful endings first. That love, real love, isn't about never falling. It's about finding the courage to stand again together. "Second chances," Marcus murmured, pressing his forehead to hers in that gesture of intimate connection that had become their silent language of commitment. "Second chances," Nia agreed, rising on tiptoes to kiss him beneath the New Orleans stars, surrounded by the family they'd nearly lost, then rebuilt stronger and wiser through the refining fire of their shared journey, and forever beginning now,